Messenger RNA not only plays a crucial role in the vaccines against COVID, but also is an important element of CRISPR-based gene editing modalities and approaches. Now, since Pfizer have been able to fill their pockets financially with the benefits of having been able to provide one of the vaccines against the COVID pandemic, and we know that Big Pharma oftentimes acquires innovation through partnering or actually purchasing outright much smaller biotech companies, we see a similar element of this actually playing out right now in the area of companies that are specialized in CRISPR or driving further CRISPR gene editing approaches to target specific diseases. And one such example is Pfizer partnering with no other than Beam Therapeutics. And we see this in the press release that was actually already issued on January 10th. And well, for today's video, of course, I don't consider this necessarily breaking news since January has been quite a few weeks ago. I nevertheless want to touch on the elements of this agreement and also point out why I think this is a fabulous collaboration, and I'm expecting that we see this also with other companies, big pharma players. I will actually cite another example in this very same video, but this is also highly beneficial, of course, not only from a financial point of view for the, granted, somewhat smaller gene editing companies, but they also will have significant benefits when it is actually, after conclusion of the clinical trials, time to bring these really commercially to market. So, if this interests you, you want to hear what I have to say, then please stick around and follow the video to the very end.
Although I have a PhD in biomedical engineering and over 15 years of working experience in the healthcare industry, I do not intend to give you investment advice. Please consider your own risk profile before making any investments and research your investments wisely.
So, as part of this collaboration, which is aiming at advancing novel in vivo-based editing programs for an undisclosed range of diseases, well, first of all, Beam Therapeutics, of course, benefit from an upfront payment of $300 million US, and they're also eligible to receive further milestone payments in the future, which can total up to 1.05 billion as part of this 4-year research collaboration. And what do Pfizer and Beam Therapeutics aiming at putting together? How do they plan to benefit from each other's competence and knowledge? Well, Pfizer, of course, now has a global drug development and including programs, of course, that are based around messenger RNA. We have seen that, as I mentioned, for instance, very recently with the COVID vaccines, which were developed in collaboration with BioNTech, and also, lipid nanoparticles, which, are the delivery mechanisms with which mRNA, or in the case of CRISPR, gene editing modalities, are delivered to the target in order to facilitate the modification of genes. Gene therapy, so rightfully so, and this is basically focusing on Beam's leadership in base editing with messenger RNA and lipid nanoparticle delivery technologies. Here is one more detail which I believe may be too easily overlooked, but I believe that this is actually one of the key advantages of these types of collaboration between, in this case concretely, Beam Therapeutics and Pfizer, because Beam, as it is stated here, may opt in to not only a co-development program, of course, globally, but also a co-commercialization agreement for one specific program. Granted, we don't know what program that is, but the co-commercialization agreement is something that I am particularly excited about. Some of you may recall, and I leave a link to this video about Bluebird Bio in the description below, where I clearly have been able to show and pointed out that Bluebird Bio, as an example, really failed to enter into the European market. And I believe that this is truly been attributed to the fact that Bluebird Bio did not have a large commercial partner being able to facilitate the pricing negotiations and being able to get into the European market. And this, I believe, is a challenge that many of the smaller, highly innovative gene editing companies may face as they approach through the clinical trial phases, the commercialization phase. And in this regard, it is always very, very advantageous to have an experienced big partner who knows the landscape, the markets they are entering in, who has the deep pockets and also the relationships from previous commercializations to ensure that these highly innovative and perhaps as a single treatment initially quite costly or perceived as being quite costly treatments to introduce those successfully in the market. So both companies are keeping, well, the details of the exact collaboration and diseases that are aiming to treat, well, somewhat secret for now. All we know is, of course, that this is an exclusive 4-year research collaboration, and it is focused on in vivo base editing programs for 3 targets that are actually rare genetic diseases impacting the liver, muscle, as well as the central nervous system. And again, the core technologies that both of the companies bring to the table are for Beam Therapeutics, the proprietary in vivo technologies which use messenger RNA and lipid nanoparticles to deliver base editors to target organs. And again, this program aims at doing that in vivo. And we have Pfizer, a big pharmaceutical player who has proven experience in developing and manufacturing actually medicines as well as vaccines. And with this collaboration, both parties seek to advance potentially transformative therapies for patients living with rare diseases. And this is also quite interesting, of course, because we know and have discussed on my channel as well that rare diseases, the challenge, of course, is that the patient population is really small, but the regulatory environment provides incentives and actually significant protections for those companies who dare to venture into the rare disease area. And if you want to learn more about those, I have a couple of videos on this specific topic as part of the Health Wealth Investor Toolkit series, to which I leave the link here. What I am particularly excited about is that under the terms of this collaboration agreement, Beam will conduct all research activities through development and candidate selection for 3 undisclosed targets, and those are not actually included in Beam's existing programs. So, these research activities and developments go beyond the current scope of the clinical activities of Beam. And I believe that this is always a great opportunity for the scientists at Beam Therapeutics to also venture into other disease areas because, well, you always learn more, and that is really absolutely fantastic. And this is the point that I highlighted just previously. I believe that many of the very innovative gene editing companies, such as Beam Therapeutics, are absolutely experts in the science and the research they do. However, none of these companies have really brought to market and commercialized any of their treatments. And that is an area of expertise that clearly Big Pharma have mastered many, many times over. So any partnerships between a company such as Beam Therapeutics and Big Pharma like Pfizer definitely increases, in my opinion, the chances that the regulatory approval and commercialization activities go much faster and much more smoothly than if Beam had to do it all on their own. And potentially, I would say for Beam, it gets even better because, as stated here, Beam has the right to opt in at the end of phase 1-2 studies for the payment of an option exercise fee to a global co-development and co-commercialization agreement with respect to one of those programs under license and pursuant to the collaboration to which Pfizer and Beam would share the net profits as well as the development and commercialization costs with a split 65% and 35% ratio for Pfizer and Beam alike. So, in other words, if Beam wants to opt into this, well, they get to look over the shoulder of the activities that, Pfizer are definitely experts in terms of commercialization. And, those are only learnings that Beam, if they choose to, can then apply to their future other programs that Beam develop entirely on their own. And I think that's a huge advantage. So then let's take a look at what this upfront payment of $300 million that Beam will get actually does to the company's bottom line. So if we take a look at the 10Q form, the latest ones they actually had filed, we can see here in the section with all of the financials, latest information is September 30th of 2021, as you can see. So we see total assets, again, listed in thousands, of course. So total assets, 1.156 billion. And when we scroll down, we see total liabilities of, 300 million. What a or 302, almost 303 million. So what a coincidence. They get 300 million from this collaboration agreement upfront, and that basically wipes out all of their liabilities right there on the spot. So it's a really nice addition to the bottom line of the company, I would argue. So then let's take a look at what this event, this collaboration announcement had actually done to the stock price of Beam Therapeutics, ticker symbol BEAM. So we get here to January 10th this year. Stock price was 68.46. The following day it jumped to 75.68, and as you can see, it quickly came back down again. And overall, Beam, as part of the biotech and gene editing stocks, undoubtedly you are aware, have really come down significantly from their highs that we saw in 2021. Many of the companies saw their stock price basically halved or even more. And what we see here between big pharma and these smaller gene editing companies is really that with their reduced stock prices, these become really interesting targets. Much of the innovation that we see in the healthcare sector right now is actually in the gene editing space, because gene editing for the first time really allows us to develop cures for many diseases that are gene-based or genetically based, and for which we had no treatments before. Now, with all of the company prices being pretty much halved from what we saw in 2021, the first wave of big pharma will definitely be partnering with these innovative companies in order to expand their own pipelines and being able to provide, innovative treatments to patients. And I am quite convinced that should prices of gene editing companies in the broader market still come down further, that we then will start to see probably some of the big pharma companies actually not only considering to partner, but perhaps to acquire these highly innovative gene editing companies. Beam Therapeutics and Pfizer was one example, and I will wrap up the video by showing you just another example as well. Another highly innovative gene editing company that is actually still private is Mammoth Biosciences. And you can see here that they have partnered with the German drug and pharmaceutical company Bayer, and also have a collaboration agreement to collaborate on novel gene editing technologies. And so how does this collaboration fit into Bayer's strategy? Well, they have already a new cell and gene therapy platform, and this collaboration will strengthen this platform. And here we can see further details of this collaboration agreement, which is ultimately an option agreement for the use of Mammoth's CRISPR system to develop in vivo gene editing therapies. And what they will start with, as we can see here, is a focus on liver-targeted diseases. It's nicely written here in this text as well that cell and gene therapies are the next step in the evolution of drug development. Well, I have said it in slightly different words, but it's ultimately also written here and in line with my thinking. So this collaboration will then bring together Mammoth's novel CRISPR systems with the existing gene augmentation and induced pluripotent stem cells that Bayer have developed and have a platform actually for. I hope that you are as excited as I am about these collaboration agreements. I also hope that you gained some value out of taking you behind the scenes and showing you that there's actually more than meets the eye of these collaboration agreements, the hidden advantages, so to speak, that go far beyond these collaborations for Beam Therapeutics and the other companies. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking it and subscribing to my channel.